Okay, now we are live on YouTube. Yeah.
Nifty. So yeah, we are about T-1 minute from starting. This is 1:59. Okay, it is 2 o'clock. So, should we get this show on the road, Han?
Yes, please. Let me. Okay, so let me first grant you as the host, and okay.
Great. All right, welcome everybody. It's another second Tuesday of the month, so it's that time once again for Engineering All Hands here at Jina AI. Welcome one and all. So, what is Engineering All Hands, you may be asking? So it's a summary of what's going on at Jina, totally open to the community, open to anyone. You can join, your grand can join, your dog can join. We talk about the goals we're striving towards. We have a show and tell session, and we handle any technical or product Q&A. As I said, second Tuesday of each month, 2 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. CET, or however long it lasts. And it's right here on Zoom and also streams over on our YouTube channel. So, on the agenda today, we are talking about Jina 2.0, baby. So yes, why are we doing it? What's the feedback on 1.0? What changes are we making? When is all this going to be done? How is it going to impact you, the users? And of course, Q&A. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Max and he will do the presentation.
You're muted.
Fair enough. So welcome to Jina 2.0, to my presentation for Jina 2.0. First of all, when you have any questions, please just interrupt me and ask questions. If you don't want to speak up or you don't have a microphone, feel free to type it in the chat. And then hopefully Alex will interrupt me or someone from the team just interrupt me and read the question because I can't see the chat while I do the presentation. So don't hesitate. It will get here and there a little bit technical. If you have technical questions, really ask them in between. It's better than doing it at the end, I would say. So Jina 2.0 will come pretty soon. And you might ask, oh, already? Why that? You just released in February 1.0. Why would you go for 2.0 already now? Now Jina 2.0. And the main reason is we heard the community somehow and heard a lot of feedback that you gave us. And also ourselves, while we developed Jina, we are pretty happy with what happened in 1.0 and with the features that we added there and with the things that one can build with it. But there are certain aspects where we think, okay, we need some change in certain aspects, and I will motivate them first before we somehow go into what will change. So first of all, we heard from the community quite some feedback. One feedback that we hear quite a lot is that the learning curve of Jina is way too steep, and that somehow you have to learn too many concepts before you can really apply Jina to production environment. But on the other hand, we also hear that the functionality itself is pretty good, and somehow what you can build with Jina is powerful, and what people also, when they want to build something with Jina, they can actually achieve it. So we have this, okay, it's too hard to learn, but actually the functionality itself is good as we envision the functionality. Then we several times heard that the data structures are pretty nice, and somehow that there are really empowering the user to think about new solutions and implement these new solutions. So it seems like we also did a good job there. But there are too many components somehow and too many layers which you need to learn before you can somehow go start doing something with Jina. And so we took this feedback, and actually we really somehow think I totally agree with what come back. And the talk 4 weeks ago in our last public all hands engineering all hands inspired us also to make the user interface easier. And during the development, we somehow got to also some insights. So one of it is somehow to have a more powerful Jina, we don't need more features. We somehow adjust the features that we have to make them easy accessible and usable. So we focus with Jina 2.0, we want to focus on making Jina easier usable and without extending it with a huge amount of features, but rather really allow you to use the right ones at the right time. Then when we initially developed Jina, we had the drivers in there. And this and the next slide will be the only slides where you will see anything about drivers in the future anymore, because afterwards they're just gone. We need them in the beginning because the way how we handled our internal data, they were needed to make it not too confusing for the user. But actually with the document and the document array, we somehow wrapped the initial binary data and protobuf data representation in a way that this is nicely usable for the user, and there is no need for the drivers anymore. And we also found that building new executors was way too hard, because you need to know, okay, with which drivers do you have to couple this? And there were quite some efforts needed in order to build new executors nicely. But also as a community, we are somehow content with the Jina functionality. So we think like we really nailed how you can do neural search from functionality. It's just not too easy usable for now. And yeah, so that's somehow the feedback that we incorporated and our thoughts for Jina 2.0. And the main changes are around the interface, how you use it, and not the functionality below this interface. So one target was to reduce the complexity. So with Jina 1.0, when you want to build a neural search, you need to think about a flow in order to somehow, this is when you have an index flow, you think, okay, I need to craft things, then I need to embed my documents, and then in the end, store this embedding into an indexer. And we also introduced in our Jina 101 the concept of pods, which you need for scaling, and Ps, which you need for somehow this network management. Then we also introduced the concept of drivers and executors. So, and when you want to use Jina 1.0, you mostly have to think about all of these concepts, or at least learn a little bit about each concept in order to really use it. And with Jina 2.0, 3 layers somehow go away, where the driver really completely vanishes. It's not there anymore. But pods and Ps are somehow there, but the typical user should not care about them. They're somehow for us used in order to do the job in the background that is need to be done to scale out Jina, to connect the different pieces that we have. But from a user perspective, you shouldn't care about pods and Ps in the future anymore. So we reduce these 5 components to 2, the flow and the executor. And in the future, Jina 101, somehow it would look like the following. You have the flow and the executor, you have a document area and the document, and that's it. That's all the things that you have to care about when you learn about Jina. And I want to put these 4 things a little bit more into context. So a document is somehow your data. You have some data which you want to index, or with which you want to search, you put this into a document. The document array is just an aggregation of data. So it's with a little bit more functionality so that you can somehow do nice things with your data. But in the end, the document array is nothing more than an aggregation of data. Then we have the executor, which processes data. Processing in this sense means it could split the data like a text into sentences. It could embed the data to somehow add the embedding to one of the documents, or it could index the data and somehow persist it into an indexer, or search in an indexer, or ranking the data. So it somehow does something with the data, the executor. And then we have the flow, which somehow streamlines executors. So since one executor might do one thing, sometimes also several things, but most probably when you have an index flow or you want to index data, you need to do more than one thing. And so the flow allows you to combine multiple of these executors. It also allows you to combine them in a way that once you go to production, can scale out your system. And that's all you need to know about Jina when you read the Jina 101 after our 2.0 release. let's wrap this up again in some more text. So document, executor, and the flow are the three fundamental concepts in Jina from now on. And as I said before, so the document is the basic data type. You can think when you think NumPy, basic data type, data type in NumPy is the float 32 or float 64 or whatever you have as for float. So that is somehow your basic data type. The executor is how we process this data, so what we do with this data. And then the flow is how you combine and scale the executors. And when you learn these three concepts, you're ready to go with Jina, and that's all you need to know. You don't need to understand anything about P-pods, the things that happen under the hood anymore from now on. And I want to go for the executor and the document a little bit more into detail what happened here. So the executor got heavily redesigned. In a moment, I will show you how you can use it from now on. It got an easier interface, so not so you don't need to know a lot of different interfaces, but just one to implement your own executor. And we reduced the functionality, but in the end, the functionality got more powerful because it gave back more freedom to the one who develops executors, so the Jina user. And it doesn't restrict the Jina user so much in what you can do with an executor. Okay, and for the document, the document in the end has several different types of attributes. It has content attributes like text or binary blob for images. Yeah, you have different context attributes. You have different meta attributes. This could be the ID or the MIME type of a document or other meta attributes, which someone is not really the content, but just further information. Then, as Jina users until now already know, and newbies then will learn, that we have recursive attributes, which might be chunks. So when you think of a text, when you want to break down a text into sentences, somehow this chunks of this text are the sentences. So, and with recursive attributes, you somehow can navigate through your document structure and break down and get the chunks of the document. Or when you do a search in the end, you can get the matches. Somehow for each document, you can get, okay, what actually matches this document. And the document also has relevance attributes like the score. So this is somehow the content of a document. And then the document is also equipped with some functionality. And first of all, there are conversion functions, for example, where you can convert image URI into image binary data and so on. So this allows you to do several conversions with your document. It has serialization out of the box, so you can write your document either into a binary blob or into a JSON and then store it and read it again from disk. So that's pretty neat. It has the traversal. So the traversal that before lived somewhat close to the driver now moves to the document and can be fully controlled by the user. What should happen with the traversal? And the document also finally got some nice visualizations. So when you have the concept of chunks and matches, it was always hard before to get really the fingers dirty with these concepts. So we had nice pictures to generally explain these concepts, but in the moment you got chunks and matches yourself, it was always hard to visualize them. And they now got some pretty nice visualization, which I will showcase a little bit later as well. So some of the document is data container, which has some basic attributes and then functionality equipped to it. And now that I talked somehow about the concepts, I want to go into some code, but beforehand, I give you the chance to ask questions, if there are some. Then I take the silence as there are no questions yet. And we'll jump directly into some code. So first, I have now a Python. Oh.
There's one question in the chat. Sammy was asking options like customer transformer is staying.
Yes, yes. So you can build your own executor whenever you want. So in general, you can do with executors whatever you want. So you definitely can write the custom transformers. But when you have somehow the torch transformers and somehow have just trained the model as it is used by the typical transformer interface of PyTorch or TensorFlow, you could also just use the our PyTorch some hub executor and then use your model. So the functionality there stays the same. The change is more about when you want to add your own custom transformer or your own custom backend for machine learning or for whatever, it becomes much easier for you to add this as well. You're welcome. Yes, so let's jump into some code. I hope it's readable. So whenever you want to run Jina with plain Python for now, you need to import several things. And what you see in my import is the executor. We talked about it before. The flow. We talked about it before. The document array, and one more magic function, which I will explain in a second. But that's all. You will most probably really seldom need to import something more than this. And when the flow interface, let's move down directly how you somehow define a flow. You can define your flow with getting just a flow object as before and add an executor. This is the same as it was with 1.0, so not much changed. But when you use now this flow, you also can do the withf, and then you call the post endpoint. More about this later on, for example, search, and then you can give input some documents. So this is almost as the 1.0 interface. The only thing is that we don't have a .search.index, but just a .post interface here. And with this, you can somehow describe your flow and start a flow and send data to the flow. So this is sending data to the flow. And now let's look if we want to implement our own custom executor, what happens here. So before, whenever you wanted to have an executor, you had to think, okay, on which base executor do I have to inherit from? Is it an indexer? Then I use my base indexer. Is it a crafter? I use my base crafter. But for now, it's always you just inherit from the executor. That's it. No thinking needed anymore. Just always this one. And then in this executor, we just want to print the documents that somehow come to the executor. And so we write our print document function. This document function gets a document array, which are actually all the documents that are sent as an input. And then we do something with these documents. And here we iterate through all of them, and then we just plot all of them. Since we sent just one, well, just one will be plotted. And if we execute this code now, we see a flow is starting, then some of the flow is started here. The flow is running, some data is sent. We see document visualization. This is the actual plot. And then the flow ends and is done. This is the print statement that we somehow have at the end of the flow where we say on done print. Then just the result is print to string. So we see here now two representations of our request. Once we see here the whole request where somewhere the docs are inside. And we get this magic visual representation. We can get a link, which we can click on, which uses Mermaid. It's a kind of a drawing application where you can set SVGs as a binary data, and then you get this drawing. And here we see we have our document. Document got an ID. This is randomly generated when you don't give one to the document. Has a text, hello, and the MIME type text. So that's our graphical representation. Nothing fancy because it's just one document. And I would like to directly go into a little bit more into the graphical representation of the document. So let's say for this document, we want to add a chunk. So we could just doc.chunks.append, and we can add a second document. And here we say the text of the second document, well, we ask hello, let's add world. And also let's add an exclamation mark. Should be a proper hello world. And now we plot it again. And if we do it now, we get a longer link because there's more to draw. But now we see we have our document and two chunks. This is the world chunk. Here we see the text world. And this is the text chunk, the exclamation mark chunk. And so with this graphical representation, you directly can see what happens, how documents are structured, which we hope will make it much easier to debug Jina and understand what is happening. So much for the drawing. So then there was one when we had the F post. I said, okay, now we don't need index and search anymore, but just post. And actually, you can do whatever you want on an endpoint. This can be search, this can be index, this can also be random work. So you go to one endpoint, and this is the end, and an executor registers to different endpoints. When you just use requests, then you register to all endpoints. And when you say here on/random work, up, now we say only this should be called on this executor. Or we could have a second function, which might be, so let's say one is just print document and the other is print append document. And in the print, we just print, and in the other we first append and then we print. And this we call print, and this we might call print append. And then we say, oh, in this flow, we just want to call the print endpoint. And then only this one is called for this executor and not the other one. You might be reminded of Fast API. It's kind of similar look and feel. And when we go into the search domain, most probably there will be an index and a search endpoint in case the business logic behind index and search changes. This makes a whole lot of sense if you, for example, have an indexer, then doing the index, you write documents, and doing search, you get them out of the index again. But if you think about the crafter, you could also have a function which does, for example, sentence size. This gets some more, again, data. And this does something docs for doc and docs. Doc.text.split, and then it writes it back and so on. So I don't want to go into more detail here. Let's just keep it where it is and don't go into too much detail. But this somehow does the same for index and search requests. And here you could just say requests. And then it goes to all the requests that are sent through the flow. Whenever this executor is then bound into the flow, it will always go to this function. So we use an endpoint binding mechanism for all our executors. And yeah, when you call a function on the flow, the post, you can say to which endpoint to go. Another thing that happens now with a new interface is when you want to test your executor and try around if it works as expected. You can just say my executor equals my executor, and then my exec dot print document of, okay, now you need document array. And this should get a document. And text could be hello. And now we just call this function with a plain document array, and that's it. So you can easily test your executors without somehow writing a flow around it, and you know exactly what comes in. So it's a document array where you define your documents. So the whole interface gets much easier to use because you exactly know what goes in. It's always the full data and not just some magically extracted data. Now you see here we have somehow the docs. We always use the docs document array, and then we have somehow this KV args. And for this KV args, there can be you can not only send the documents to this to a function, but also other things that implicitly by the flow somehow always added. And there are added the docs, then parameters which you can send with a call to the flow, which is especially useful if you, for example, want to search and allow the user to define how many results to return. Then the parameters could, for example, be results to return. And then inside the executor, you can add just reducing the amount of results in your document area on the matches. Then you get a docs matrix. I don't want to go into detail too much here, but in the end, this is nice for combining several the results of several charts, but I don't go into too much detail here. This is really just for advanced users. And you have the ground truth and the ground truth matrix. Matrix is again as docs matrix, a more complicated matrix, but the ground truth itself is used for evaluation, where you somehow can send along with documents the expected matches for these documents. And this is somehow all that the that functions in an executor, which you decorate with the request decorator can get. Yes, and so one point somehow about using the executor without the flow is also that you much easier can now write tests. So if you now write a test my executor, this becomes much easier because you can somehow directly just instantiate this executor and then work with it. And there is no need to magically build a driver around it to do, or build a flow around it for testing. So testing is really run just on the object, just the function itself, with you can control the input and the output data pretty good. So much for the basic Python example. And then in Jina, we always have the possibility to also use YAML together with Python, that we define our flow in YAML. So again, I have here an executor defined. And now in the flow, instead of saying using the my executor, I say I use the my.yaml, which is the YAML definition of an executor. And let's look into my.yaml. If you ever worked with Jina before, this should look very familiar to you. Somehow you define the executor at the top, which you want to use. Then you define arguments, which you give the init function of the executor. Then you can define some metas, which are just further information about the executor, which are always available. And now comes a big difference. Before we had here something like requests on and so on, and then you needed to define on which driver to do what, and this somehow is completely gone. The only thing that you can do now is endpoint binding. So instead of using the requests decorator, here there is no request decorator. You can, with requests, say which endpoint should go to which function. And with this, whenever you have a executor defined, for example, in the hub, like the transformer executor, where we had the question beforehand, you can somehow use this transformer executor and define your own endpoints and your own ways of using a flow and saying to which function to go with which endpoint. And then finally, we can run the flow. Here again, we go to the random endpoint as defined in the YAML and then put in documents. And if the foo function is something like foo says, we should see in the output. And here's foo says, and we get it. So whatever was printed there, let's have a look. It's the self.bar. Okay, this is some variable we set via the YAML. The bar was 1, 2, 3. And then it says self.metas, so all the meta arguments that we have, and then whatever comes in to the foo function itself. And here we have the 1.3 as expected. Then we have the metas, which is the namespace with the description. This is the description we had before in the YAML, and the name, which is also from the YAML. But it also has, there are 2 or 3 more implicit things. So there's a workspace, which is somehow placed on the disk where the executor can store data if the executor needs to store data, which is especially handy for indexers. And then some more meta information, which the typical executor designer doesn't need to know, but which are handy if you want to know it. And then finally, we see the docs, somehow the ** KV args, which are just docs, where we see it's a document area again with a certain length. And then the parameters, which I talked before, the docs metrics, the ground truth, and the ground truth metrics. These are exactly somehow the argument or the possible arguments I talked before, that when you use the request, which you can get, and they are exactly here. So nothing surprising. Yeah, that's how you, from now on, can use Jina with YAML and Python. Are there any questions so far? Or comments or additions?
It looks like nothing.
Okay.
So that just means your talk was really clear.
Hope so. Oh, way too fast. Let's see. Cool. Yeah, then let me jump into the slides once again. So that's what I want to show about the code, and so that you can see how Jina 2.0, the code is used, and how easy the interface got. So the executor, you didn't need to care about at all about any driver, any implicit logic. Whatever is there is absolutely explicit. You know, once you have understood how a document works, you can get it in your hands and you can use it. Once you have understood how a document array works, you can get it in your hands and you can use it, and there is no magic. And perhaps I already showed you this. So during development of 2.0, and somehow we are try to write our best practices and how we envision certain features in cookbooks. And since we're open source, it's open source and you can see it. And we don't want to hide it from you. So they're a work in progress. They may change over the next weeks. And so they're not set in stone. But if you're super interested and already want to sneak peek, you feel free to look at the cookbooks. The links are later in the presentation, where we somehow explain again the minimum working examples that I just showed are in here. And there are three cookbooks, one for the executor, which describes how the executor is built. We then see, for example, how the executor API changed. Down here, you see there are several functions, and some of them remained, but most of the more complex ones somehow got removed because there's not much benefit in still having them. Yeah, and you can see more information here for the power user of Jina. That might be quite interesting. The same is true for the document. We somehow have the same cookbook where we explain all the functionality. Sorry. I'm sorry. Where somehow also the attributes that I talked before somehow are shown in more detail. Where you can see then even more detail about certain attributes, and again, some more information about the visualization and so on. So yeah, if you're a power user of Jina or you use Jina and want to sneak peek in what happens in the future, feel free to look here. But as I said before, this is work in progress. That might change. And the third cookbook is pretty small yet. This we want before the 2.0 release. Most probably this will increase, which gives you like best use cases how you can use cookbooks. Okay, and now let's come to the timeline. When will all of this happen and become usable for the user? And our current vision is the following. In May, we have now 2 work streams. We still have a 1.x releases and we have 2.0 release. And let's first talk about the 1.x releases. So we still want to finalize our features for Jina 1.3 and release 1.3. Because some of our customers are really looking forward for some features that will be included in the 1.3 release. And so we don't want to keep you waiting until we somehow released everything with 2.0, which might be a little bit later, so that you don't, you still can use Jina and get what we promised to you, that we will still release this. Afterwards, we don't plan any further 1.x releases. And the reason why we call it also Jina 2.0 and not Jina 1.4 and so on is because the user interface breaks quite a lot, and also a lot of design principles behind Jina breaks a lot, and so we don't want to continue with 1.x releases. We also most probably with 1.x won't actively look ourselves for bugs, but if you find critical bugs, we will fix them. After we release at some point Jina 2.0, there will be no further 1.x support. So once we release Jina 2.0, we highly encourage you to move also to the new interface and APIs. Now on the 2.0 side, currently in May, we will work on the Devil -2.0 branch. So if you want to sneak peek into it, you can sneak peek into it and see what happens there. A lot of things will change. You will see a lot of code changed. And until the end of May, we hope that we can release the first Jina 2.0 beta. This time, we decided to release first the beta, and perhaps also second and a third, and let's see how many betas we will release before we release a final Jina 2.0. So we envision for July to have a final 2.0 release. Yeah, but we don't want to keep you waiting, but want to show the capabilities of Jina 2.0 as early as possible. That's why we want to release betas. During June, we will have continuous beta releases, and all executors that are currently in the Jina core will move to the hub. So this is, for the user, it might not make a big difference for now, but for the future, this will make a huge difference because it makes the development of executors again easier, because there is not multiple places, sometimes in the core and sometimes in the hub, but there's exactly one place for the executors to live in, and that's the hub. And then we hope for that in July we can release Jina 2.0 and make your life easier and also our life easier, because for us it also gets easier to develop executors, and a lot of concepts got much better separated and nailed to the actual use case. So I want to go back to the motivation in the very beginning. I'm pretty happy with what we achieved with Jina 1.0 and somehow really the power that got you, but it's hard to use this power. And we hope that beginning from July, our community, and especially our new community members, can much easier understand and start using Jina, and that it feels then like NumPy. You install it, you use it, and you know how you use objects. So I have one final section, which is impact on our users. And here I want to separate 4 types of users, or like 3 types of users. And first of all, for all users, somehow, hopefully, getting things done faster will be a paradigm that you will feel. So it's easier to get into Jina, and afterwards easier to do things with Jina. And due to the executed refactoring or redesign, it will also become much easier to share common building blocks, like common executors. Combining executors will become easier, and then also orchestrating, I don't show this today, but orchestrating multiple executors together in a more complex way, which is especially useful for rankers, for example, will become much easier, because you don't need this driver executor binding where it gets complicated to orchestrate several of them together. And all will obviously become full support, get full support of the Jina team, either via Slack or GitHub, wherever you reach us. Then for our existing users, we hope that you will participate in pre-releases and give your feedback, how you like the new interface, and especially how the migration works. If you have any questions, as I said before, ask us via all our channels. We encourage you to latest migrate right after the 2.0 release, because afterwards we won't support 1.x much longer or at all. So you can wait during the beta. You don't need to migrate, but after the beta, we heavily encourage you to migrate to the 2.0. And most probably you need to reindex all your data, or at least need to take some care about how you move your data from the old 1.x to 2.x. So now let's talk about the new users. So we are absolutely sure that the onboarding will be easier. So that is a no-brainer for us. And we're happy that we got this. And we encourage any new users that will join in the moment we release the 2.0 release candidate 1 to use this one and don't care about Jina 1.x anymore. So if you're new to Jina, we highly encourage you read about Jina 2.0 and don't read about 1.x. The release candidate 1 will hopefully be published end of May. We are currently quite confident that we can do it. And finally, this is now a little bit what is it for us in the game, so more as a Jina core developer. So what is pretty nice that the business logic left the core. So the core can now really, whenever we develop something at the core, we think about the framework, how the moving parts in Jina work together, how you can glue things together. Not so much about concrete business implementation, concrete executors, which is pretty nice because it gets a much cleaner cut for us, and it makes it much easier to develop the core actually. And for the Jina Hub will be the place for all our executors. There might be 1 or 2 living in the core, which are just for integration tests in the core, but all other executors go to the hub. And that is for us as core developers super convenient, because there's a clearer separation of concerns and a clearer best practices, what to do when, where. So much for the users and the impact. So I promised you the links to the cookbooks. Here they are. They're a little bit cryptic. That's more, if you go to our repository, go to the Devil -2.0 branch, and then under .github 2.0, you'll find the cookbooks. And I just want to emphasize it again, they are work in progress. So they will change here and there. The general direction won't change. We are pretty confident that we nailed this, but details will change before 2.0. then that's it from my side. Now, if you have any questions, first let's focus on questions to Jina 2.0, and afterwards we can go to general questions towards Jina. Then now it's time again to shoot.
And for anybody wanting to check out the cookbooks, I just posted the links to the Zoom chat.
Thanks a lot, Alex. Perfect. Yes, I think the question, should we start, wait for 2.0 is already answered. So I think you can still start with a project and look into it, into Jina. If you start the project end of May or beginning of June, I would say start directly with Jina 2.0. Any further questions?
So Patrick is asking, how long will 2.x last?
Okay, so that's a good question. We expected to 1.x to last a little bit longer in the first place, but actually we think that we really nailed the user interface now, that we really make it much easier and that there won't be such a huge change again. So we are pretty confident that 2.x will last way longer than 1.x. Yeah, I can't promise you any date, but I'm pretty sure that somehow for the next 6 to 12 months, we won't change to 3.x. Yeah.
Yeah, we're not looking at launching Jina XP or Jina Vista anytime soon, so don't worry.
Yeah. And I'm also pretty sure that somehow when we go to next Jina version, it will be because of a lot of features that we add, and not again that we break at least the executor flow document API won't be broken so much again. Okay. Are there any questions perhaps unrelated to Jina 2.0? Some other questions to me or anyone else in our Jina team? If not, then I would hand over to Alex now to do the community talk, as he always does.
All right. Thank you, Max. I think I just saw Lucia unmute.
I had a hunch of if I gonna ask that question, but I will leave it. It was a specific question with regards to the document visualization, and if that document visualization, that outprint that you can do after each pod. So technically, you can always that would be very helpful for debugging. Is that the way that works?
Yes, you can do this, exactly. So most probably in the executor and in the hub, we will have an executor, which is the plot executor, where you can just somehow configure it to plot certain parts of your document. And then you somehow, I guess this will happen. I mean, it's just an executor, which we need to write, which calls the plot function with some predefined functions. So more, I guess before or somewhere in the next months, this will happen. And if one community member somehow uses the plot functions in this way, also we are super happy if you just contributed. If you see, oh, this functionality for me is super critical. This should be a pretty simple executor. You just take the documents that are there and apply the filter that comes from the parameters, and you plot whatever you want to plot then. So that, so you can do this between different executors.
Yeah, I was just wondering from the debugging perspective, we get a lot of feedback around, we don't know what happens to the data at any stage, like when I chunk it, when it traversed, when I get the matches, like how do I debug? But then that could just be an executor that you attach and then you print it. Super nice, lovely.
And it might even be that, this was a thought that we had, and not sure if we implement this right with Jina 2.0, but that you have a diff executor that you say somehow I can snapshot documents at certain point in the flow, and then I can get the diff between what I have now and what I had before the last executor before. And then we somehow compute a diff between documents where you see, okay, these fields changed and the all fields that are not printed then are kept the same. But yeah, this is, I don't promise this feature, but also implement this yourself should be super easy because you just need to copy the document once and then in the next step do the diff.
Yeah, so that was my question. Thank you.
You heard it right here, folks. Jina 2.0 comes with print line debugging. Way to go for best practice.
No, it's not print line debugging. It's plot line debugging. So you plot it, you don't print it.
Ah, well, that's so much better practices.
No, it comes with a lot of different ways of debugging, but that is just one thing that I think makes it like a lot easier.
For sure. I mean, who among us doesn't use that print line debugging anyway? Do we have any people in the community who want to talk about what they're using Jina for, or how did you find out about Jina? I'm seeing a lot of new names, and I'd love to hear on you. Otherwise, I might have to call on you like an angry school mom. Anyone? Andrew. Oh, Sammy, how did you find out about us?
Hi. Well, the first time I heard from you was actually from a Microsoft advocate, which is funny. No, but we're looking into Jina to use at one of our customers for replacing Apache Solr. And also as a knowledge base for a chatbot. So we could actually just, the question that is popping in from the user, send it to Jina AI search and then hopefully get a good answer back.
Who was the Microsoft?
I'm not going to say that.
Okay.
He's a friend of mine, so I don't want to.
No, I'm from a Microsoft. I was just wondering if it's a shared network, somebody that.
Yeah, I'm not going to bring it here in public.
No. I was just come on. It would have just been fun if it's networks that match up.
It might be.
I'm wondering if we can get a connection to Bill Gates himself, so maybe he can install Jina in the next batch of vaccine microchips.
Oh yeah. Nice. And we're having a meeting on Monday, no? Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. Yes, on Monday with you.
Then we get to talk more.
Exactly.
Nice. Anyone else want to share their experiences? Who else have we got? Dumitru? Am I saying that right?
Hey, yes. Hey, hi. Hello, everyone. I've heard about Jina from one of my colleagues, and we are wanting to use Jina in the cybersecurity domain and wanted to extract visual semantics from photo content. So
Pretty
that's
cool.
the first use case. Yeah.
Very nice. Are you on our Slack?
Sorry?
Are you in our Slack channel?
I'm not in the Jina Slack channel.
Ah, okay. Because I'm sure our engineers will have some good thoughts on that.
I'll definitely join.
Good stuff. Yeah, I'm looking forward to see what comes out of that.
Thank you. Nice job.
Who else do we have? Jan, you and I spoke on LinkedIn today. How's it going?
Hey, how you doing? Yes, we spoke, and I really loved your swift reply, as well as that of Lucia, by the way. We have a meeting on Monday, but I just posted a question on the Slack community, and I was wondering if you could help me here, because we're looking for any relevant test results with Jina, because our client is looking for a benchmark to validate the POC on. So the idea is actually to measure the precision metric using Jina as a search engine. But it's hard for me to to actually set a benchmark to have a confirmation or a validation on Jina. So I was looking for any relevant data or documentation on test results of some kind.
Let me take this. This is a pretty interesting question. So benchmarking, you're really benchmarking in precision and recall, and not benchmarking in the sense of query per seconds and throughput.
Yeah,
more about the quality.
Benchmarking the precision metrics.
Okay, and here the problem is the following, or not problem, the point is the following. That heavily depends on your data and the model that you choose. So Jina is a framework which allows you to choose, bring your data and choose any model or a lot of different models in order to do your search job. Mm-hmm. And not only choosing models, when you think about I'm not sure what data you encode, but let's say you encode big chunks of text, like Wikipedia pages. This is your data that you encode. Then you can think of Wikipedia pages, you can encode them either as a complete page. Certain models well encode good complete pages because they are trained on big data, small blobs. But you can split the Wikipedia page into the parts of the page, each paragraph. And then you can say, I encode each paragraph. When you think about, let's say, African elephant as a Wikipedia page, there might be a paragraph about where they live. There might be a paragraph what they eat. And there might be a paragraph about another semantic. And then how good your quality come for your final search task is about what is your search data, and does the model fit your search data, and how does your search requests, are these keyword searches or are these bigger somehow search inputs? And so there's a lot of design decisions to be taken.
The use case relates more to what you described in terms of matching a user intent with a paragraph. It's about a government website where people are querying very specific information. For instance, I need to go and change my my ID. What do I need to bring? Or what documents do I need to sign? So it's really specific information on a multi-site platform with loads of content. And so the idea would be to really maximize the precision metrics. So the returned results should basically have a precision of 1, basically.
Okay, then when you use Jina, what you actually can do when you define somehow an evaluation data set, where you say, okay, this is my question, this should be the answer. And there's another question and the answer somehow. When you have this evaluation data set, you can actually use Jina an optimizer, which plays around, tries a lot of different models to see which one fits best your data.
Okay.
But we can't really give you now, I can't really give you, say, okay, this is our precision and this will be the recall on your data set.
I know.
Yeah, but when you want to come up with this on your own, it's also important that you somehow are well aware you might need to optimize with a lot of different models to find the one that matches best your data. And for this, I would encourage write this evaluation data, perhaps 10 or 20 queries with the matching results, and then use our optimizer in order to find first the best model. And then you can decide, okay, for this, the best model that I found now, this is my quality. Mm-hmm. Because when you just choose one model, it could be that you, I don't know, took a model which is trained on news websites, which is not, or news pages, which is not suitable for your use case, because you might be better off on a model that is trained on legal texts or whatever. So.
Yeah, but the problem here is that the client is really fixing a specific budget on the evaluation of the test. So that's why I really need to write a definition of a successful test, and that's very hard at this point because there is no benchmark at the moment.
Yes, yeah, I totally agree. And I think this is often when you do information retrieval, the hardest part of it is define what you actually want to achieve.
Yeah.
And this is exactly your problem currently, that you need to define what you want to achieve. But once you have defined it, with Jina, you can, like when you wrote one flow, you can change to a lot of different models and try out.
Yeah. Okay, but okay, that's a very valid information that you're giving me. Thank you. And if someone in the community has some relevant documentation or insights or blog posts or whatever it may be about evaluating tests on a similar use case, I would be really happy to look into them.
If you have those, feel free to drop them into Slack, people. Jan is already there.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Jan.
Since
And
I anyhow just spoke, I would like to go to the next question that some Herman asked. None already answered in the chat, but yeah, let me re-emphasize. So the reason why, because Herman just left and came back, the reason why we choose Python is because we actually don't implement the machine learning so much, but rather glue together the machine learning part of the code and the indexing part. And Jina is a framework that somehow allows you to combine these building blocks. So the data crunching that happens in machine learning actually still happens via PyTorch or TensorFlow, and somehow, which is then implemented again in CPython or in Python or in C++ itself. So the really data crunching intensive parts are anyhow optimized in the backend. And for writing code itself and some of writing this glue code to build, to combine these different moving parts, Python is, in our opinion, the easiest language to do this and some of the most versatile and best choice. Does this answer your question?
And a plus, some plus comment. As you see in Mac's slides in Jina, we actually have the layer-wise architecture. And this architecture can ensure that we rewrite different parts in other language easily later if it's needed. And for example, the message serialization and deserialization part, if we rewrite it in Golang or Rust, is definitely a way to improve the performance. Yeah. But before doing that, we need to somehow benchmark and find the bottleneck of the whole system in the real use cases. Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else got some stories to share about how they're using Jina? Okay, I'm just looking for new names. Kurt, are you there? How did you find out about Jina and what are you using it for? Okay, Kurt. No response. Vasudev Sharma? Wow, everyone's very shy today.
I can go.
Oh, great. Thanks, Andrew.
Hi, yeah, I'm Andrew. First time here, and I'm from Bangkok, Thailand, actually. And I just found out about a Jina project a few days ago, and I'm very excited and interested. A little bit of my background is I'm an engineer working with the solar. So this is very intrigued to me that somebody built neural search, and I never heard of it. So I jumped into a document for a few days, and yeah, I read it and get excited and kind of plan on maybe contributing, helping with the project. Once I get up to speed on on the Jina stuff. And you guys just mentioned that it's going to be 2.0, so I'm not sure if I should wait until 2.0 come out. But I guess I can do a sneak peek, right? So you can have a cookbook. Yes. So actually, I have a question. So, so I read in the documentation of Jina, and you compare between the symbolic search and neural search, right? Do you guys believe that one day symbolic search going to be go away, and neural search going to dominate the world?
Big question. Okay, I'll chip in. So I think neural search is great if you have the computational power to run that kind of thing, and you are not just focusing on simple text, but images, videos, 3D meshes, anything that a deep learning model can understand, that can be plugged into a neural search system like Jina. It's like if there's an encoder for AutoCAD files, you could use Jina to search AutoCAD files, for example. Whereas for basic symbolic search, you're going to be okay with text on that, but not with much else. But in the realm of text and for people with simple needs, it's fast, it's relatively less resource heavy. So yeah, engineers, anything to chip in?
I think I can share some things. So one thing is clear that what neural search provides is a great user experience that you would expect from a product, that you can search semantic, you can make semantic search, you can make searches across different types of data types. So that is important, and that improves the user experience. At the same time, I think this symbolic search is going to be there as well, and the model that in future people will have is a combination of symbolic plus neural search. So symbolic you can use where you are constrained by the resources, and where you want to improve user experience, you can have the neural search. But as you said that will neural search dominate? I definitely believe so. It will dominate, but there will be some part of symbolic search as well.
Anyone else at Jina have something to add? Cool. Yeah, Pradeep actually wrote an article about neural search. I wrote the one that's in docs.jina.ai. So yeah, anything that I can say, you've already read it in the doc, I think.
Maybe I can say something from the engineer's perspective. I think the power of Jina or the power of AI search is beyond modality. So what we mentioned, using text to search text, is mostly from single modality or unimodality search. But if you want to do cross-modalities search or multimodality search, it's going to be difficult. So if you think about you want to search an image using text. So in the traditional search engine, such as maybe different type of search systems, we normally use people's power to annotate maybe a music, to annotate a piece of image, or people use the surrounding text from an image to search for the image. So it's quite difficult to use the symbolic search to do that. But with the power of AI search, we can encode the text into an embedding. We can also encode an image to an embedding. We can map them into a same embedding space and compute similarity between them. So this makes search much more powerful using AI. So AI is much more beyond the text, using text to search text. It's like cross-modality or multimodality. So if you think about the motivation of Jina, we want to build a search system to allow anyone to search any kind of data. So beyond text to text. So I think that's the power of AI-based search. That's it.
Yeah, basically we're anything to anything.
Yes, and anything could also mean, as a search request, a lot of metadata. I think this will enhance the power a lot. So I'm not sure if you've ever watched yourself going to a shop and searching for something in a shop. But when you do this, you look around, you get somehow, you see something, then you think about this. Somehow the search is not just t-shirt, yellow, I don't know, whatever, my size, but you somehow have a completely different experience while you search, somehow what you see, and like a back and forth in the nailing down what you actually want to get. And which is like a conversation. Either you have the conversation with someone who sells things to you, or a conversation with yourself, somehow with what you see in the shop. And I think this is not yet really fully understood, but whenever you do symbolic search, you won't get much further because guessing fluffy semantics into a symbolic search is kind of hard. But from my perspective, neural search opens the door to adding more fluffy semantics into your search request. Like, he has seen this before, he has done this before, to get a richer search question, somehow get the context in. And I believe this will be the strong part of symbolic search. And depending on the use case, I think of neural search, and depending on the use case, it might be that at some point there you will, the best solution will be kind of a combination of both. So with hard filters, you can filter down to a certain set of somehow results that you somehow your neural search gets easier, and you don't have to perform your neural search on huge masses of data, and then you can do the neural search just on the corner that you actually want to search for things and then get what you want. And I believe this is the way it will go, because and somehow this is all this getting this context in is what is missing in the current search. And Google has it because Google has vast amount of data, so it can get a lot of context in. But all other search systems somehow, or a lot of other search systems don't have this yet. But representing this, getting context in textual search is quite hard.
Good answers, everyone. A question from Vasudev. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Where does Jina AI see itself scaling over the next years?
Scaling in which sense?
As a company or as a product?
As a product.
And then I go back to Max's question, scaling in which sense of the product. So scaling in the deployment of the product, scaling different types of features, or scaling, sorry.
So scaling in general.
So I think that depends on who will use us, to be honest. I mean, we will see, and when there is a certain need in the industry for us, and at the certain part of the industry starts using us, and we will definitely go into this direction. So if there are somehow a lot of small companies use us, which don't need like crazy scaling to thousands of machines and so on, where you have like several encoders and machines run in parallel, then most probably we will scale rather into a smaller setup and into perhaps software as a service, where we then also provide a lot of solutions for our for customers that for small customers, if this is super useful. If there is a lot of big customers which will use us in a really high scale, where we need to scale to thousands of machines and do this, then obviously we need to cater for this and to take care of into this direction. I think that the building blocks are there to go in either direction. And now it's we need to see where is the need. So we now open the technology and everybody can use it and can see, okay, where can I go with it? And can then say, oh, wait, but here I get the boundaries, and then we need to push the boundaries into this direction. And I think we are pretty open to where we go. So because the Jina infrastructure is built from the very beginning to be scalable until to thousands of machines, but at the same time it's also designed to be, especially now with the 2.0 release, to be easily usable by smaller companies and smaller or individuals. And so.
But when we look, sorry, no, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I didn't want to. No, you finish your sentence, then I have mine.
Okay. Then and one more thing regarding algorithmic wise, that so we want to lay the ground, the building blocks, and hope that we won't train new models. So that also depends what models will be in the market when there are more and more, for example, models that are able to incorporate 3D graphics into whatever, do things in 3D, encode this, and then you can search in 3D. Then that might be a way where we go. When there are models which do text, even like 10 times better than GPT-3 currently, then that might be, text might just skyrocket, textual search. So that really also depends on the industry. But we lay the foundation to grow in a lot of directions.
Sorry, I just wanted to add on a product level. So we also we're also building out a console. So we're also building out a front end that basically allows you to interact with Jina in a more no code or low code environment, and kind of lets you manage Jina, like your Jina instances, not just as a one-off, but like lets you manage them continuously. So that is another kind of like, it's not scaling, but it's definitely where how we're expanding the product. And we're also building into what we call cloud, where it's all about kind of managed service solutions that we then kind of abstract all the kind of pain from managing infrastructure away. So this is basically how we basically see over the next coming years, also expanding the product ecosystem overall. That's not necessarily scaling, but that definitely has to do with how you scale and use it in production. But yeah. That would be on the overall product roadmap.
Okay, a question from Herman. Are the audio/text models in Jina language independent, or is there an internal switch to determine language? This would also have a bearing on how the answer would be displayed to the user.
Yes, so in principle, you can use what you want, what there is there. So if you use a multilingual model and choose one which you want to use with Jina, then you can do multilingual search. If you choose a model per language and somehow have a different encoder per language, and perhaps also an indexer, which you can design in the Jina flow, that's somehow in the beginning, you have a language determination model, which is usually when you get text in and the text is longer than 20, 30 characters, it's trivial to get the correct language. And then you somehow use different models depending on the language you detect, and then also search in different domains. You can do this if you prefer this. So that's how you, depends on you, how you want to design your search flow. Both is possible. But I would like to be interested in your use case somehow when you need somehow multi-language support. That would be super interesting for me.
Yeah, Herman, do you want to jump on the mic and tell us a little more about your use case? We'd love to hear it.
Hey guys, my name is Herman. Like, I came on to Jina. I came to know about Jina by doing some random searches, and then I came across neural search. I hope I'm audible.
Loud and clear.
Okay. So I came across Jina as a neural search thing when I was looking for something else. And I like the concept that you're trying to bring all these different kinds of models together in one space. So initially I thought you were taking on Google by, like going for it through, by not having any input as a barrier. So any kind of input that comes in, you're going to get a result. So that led me to check out more about Jina, and I came across something, a certain requirement where you are looking for correcting text. So there was a spell checker kind of thing that I saw in the issues, and so that really, I don't know, that motivated me to start checking on some probabilistic statistical language models that we can use for simple spell checkers. So yeah, now as for the use case, I don't really have a use case. I'm just really curious about how you all managed to do something like this, because I work in computer vision and NLP and speech. So, and I work on it at a very simple level, you can say. So it's not at your level, at the kind of generality that you have, but at a very simple level. And since I was getting into each of these domains, and since you have all of those domains on one platform, I thought by getting to know this product a little more, I would, increase my knowledge about each one of those fields. So that was my main motivation. So that's why I have all these nerdy kind of questions, not very use case related, but rather like, how did you manage to do certain things? So yeah.
Sounds cool.
Yeah.
Cool way of learning a new technology.
Huh? I didn't hear you. Can you repeat
a nice way of learning a new technology somehow by randomly finding it and then going deeper, and Cool that we have.
Yeah.
I'm happy that we are so interesting that you somehow stayed and digged a little bit or deeper into it.
Yep. I'm trying to create the spell checker. So I was looking at approach where you use KenLem, like a simple one, a simple statistical probabilistic model that can use probability to determine simple spell checking. So that you don't have to plug in a huge model like an NLP model to deal with something like that. But again, there are many issues wherein what you're going to train that on, what is the use case. So I think I'll work on it independently and then maybe get some feedback from how you all are planning to use it.
Yeah, depending how your spell checker work on the domain, spell checking could also be that you have a dictionary yourself and then somehow build an executor which takes this dictionary and just spell checks to your own dictionary somehow. And you could even use traditional methods.
No, I meant like on the Jina issues page on GitHub issues. There was a requirement posted by I'm not sure of the developer's name, but she had posted something related to the fact that when somebody queries on the Jina platform using text, like Han Solo was Han Holo or something like that. So they want to change it. They want to basically do the simple spell check correction. There was not much more information I could find regarding what exactly are you looking for, like if it's something NLP related or if you want it to be very general, and if there is a text corpus that you are looking at that you want, these words have to be spell checked correctly. So I use that as an inspiration to create my own spell checker, and then hopefully hopefully I can maybe integrate it with Jina Hub and in the process learn a lot about statistical language modeling.
Yeah, I think the spell check feature was mentioned in the release notes for 1.2.
Yeah. So I don't know, that got me going in my own personal project. I'm actually like still learning, so it's a kind of a private repo. I didn't have time in the past couple of weeks because of health issues, so I'll get back on it as soon as possible.
Get well soon, buddy.
Yeah, thanks.
Who else have we got? Siddharth?
Hey, yeah. My name is Siddharth, and I think like this is actually one of the first meetings that I've joined. So I've been like following the progress on Jina for a bit, but haven't really had a chance to join you guys before. I'm studying AI in Amsterdam, and like I've been like sort of exploring some new companies which are like working on AI. And I was previously living in Berlin, so I was sort of like looking at places where like some innovative companies which are working on AI in like that area because I really love the city. Anyway, so I stumbled across Jina and then I dug deeper into the docs, and yeah, I really like the product. And so I was sort of just like as a student trying to explore more of it and like getting more information and sort of like learning about it as part of my studies. But yeah, like also hopefully we'll get a chance in the future to like maybe like contribute a bit. I noticed like some first good issues to start working on, so maybe I'll go from there.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
As a learner going through the documentation, was there one thing that you stumbled across that was just confusing to you, or was there one thing that really kind of helped kind of unblock anything? Like what was really helpful, and was there anything that you kind of stumbled across? Just ask a question here.
Yeah, so actually I think for the most part it was kind of clear. Coming from like more of a technical background, I guess like I was trying to find like papers which would help me get a better idea of like what the underlying implementation was. But if I was viewing the docs as like someone as like a product manager, for example, I think those were kind of clear. Yeah, I think it was pretty helpful in general.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Good to hear.
Yeah.
did you manage to build a flow on your own? Like, did you manage to recreate an example, or like where were you?
No, actually, so this is kind of funny because like me and a friend of mine from my master's, we were trying to like build like a knowledge base system. And so we were thinking of like plugging this into there. It was just like something which seemed pretty helpful. For example, like we use like Notion between like the two of us, and like occasionally like we end up in a place where we're not really able to sort of like tie up context in different places, or like tie up ideas. And I think like I don't know if you guys have tried out something like Roam Research, which is just like another knowledge base, sort of like personal knowledge base management app. And they have this concept where they sort of like tie up like different parts of like personal knowledge bases using like a graph type system. And I think neural search could be quite helpful in developing knowledge bases where you can like connect different parts of information, making it like sort of easier to like navigate your own ideas, or like your own sort of like notes, etc. So this was like what I was looking for in terms of like a more practical use case.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you. Yeah, I think knowledge bases are a very good target for Jina. Like we're hearing that a lot. Also, of course, from company that are using us for them to build internal knowledge bases and searches for internal knowledge bases. I think that's a good first start.
Yeah, I think so. Like, I think like, I mean, like even before, like when I was working at like a corporate, like it was like really hard to sort of like manage the flow of information within these companies. Like because the last one I worked at, it was like 20,000 people. So I think like you guys are sort of located next to this company. Actually, it's called Wayfair, and it's on Karl Liebknechtstraße in Berlin. So yeah, like so we ran into a bunch of problems, and like that's sort of where the inspiration came to like try to like make knowledge bases like slightly smarter, I guess.
Cool. We'll have to look these people up.
Yeah.
Just go and knock on their door.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, if you're ever back in Berlin, give us a shout.
Yeah, I will for sure. Yeah.
And same goes for everyone. When all of these crazy bad times are over, we'll have to have a Jina Stammtisch or something.
Yeah, for sure.
Great. Who else have we got? Who can I pick on now? Hamid. Hamid, you want to talk about how you found out about Jina? Okay, I guess not. Right. I think those are all of the new names. Oh, Felix, are you there?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay. Well, and no, I'm not the user of the Jina. Maybe I would become the contributor to the Jina projects. And yes, and I would. It's a good honor to join the Jina team and as a co-development engineer. Yes. Yes, the presentation today is very great, and it looks the Jina 2.0 is very exciting and easy to use, and I think this would be a promising point for us to work on a great product. Yes.
Great. We're looking forward to seeing that pull request.
Yes.
Good stuff. Thanks, Felix. Great. I think that's all of the new people today. Has anyone else got anything on their mind they want to share? Okay, I'll take the silence as a no. In that case, I'll just bring up the presentation one more time and we will wrap things up. Okay, hang on. Bear with me, Chrome is playing up.
Let me just do it. I have it there.
Okay, yep, sure thing, Max.
Here we go. Whoop. I guess that's what you want to see.
Exactly. So yeah, if you want to learn more about us, then first port of call is our GitHub repo at github.com/Jina-AI/Jina. You can find out all about us there. If you want to talk to us more, and come on, who wouldn't? You can go to slack.jina.ai. We're there to answer all your questions and let you know whatever you want to know. And you can follow us on Twitter. Our username is Jina AI with an underscore. And yeah, there are plenty of other ways to find out about us. Our website's Jina.ai. We're on LinkedIn. You can find us all over the place, but these are the three big ones. So, I guess that's a wrap, everyone. It was great having you all here. Thank you, everybody. Thanks to Max for giving a great talk. And thanks to all of you lovely people for attending. And I hope to see you all again. Same time next month. And yeah, stay safe. Take care.
Thank you.
Over and out.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Alex, for organizing and moderating and all of this. Really cool.
We forgot to thank our little Zoom bomber for spicing things up. Oh, really gutted. Well, okay, I'm signing this thing off now. Bye. Everybody.
Okay, bye.